Oh boy, so Clefairy got announced in Pokemon Unite and that Pokemon was scrapped such a long time ago. I think Pokemon Unite opened their trash bin, saw Clefairy and was like, hey, you know what? Sure it stinks, sure it's rotten, but I think we should release this Pokemon now. Hi traders, I'm Teeds. This is Nuts. I'm going to be talking about an item that was scrapped a very long time ago, and I'm really excited for Clefairy to come to the game. Don't get me wrong, I'm so glad they opened up that bin. One that they didn't empty out for a very long time, and they're bringing back Clefairy, which I do think is coming to the game at this time because of the Moon Festival or something. So I think that's really cool, and I'm very excited to have that Pokemon in the game. I think it's going to be a support. That's just my guess, but I'd love to hear yours. Okay, there is one thing that I want them to do. I want them to just dig a little bit deeper in that trash bin to find this one scrapped thing that I really want that I think will actually fit into the meta much better now with the new map. And that was the new battle item that I talked about a very long time ago. I talked about this item in October 13th, so it's almost been a whole year since this video and we never saw this item come to the game. So this battle item was leaked by Alchico Eevee and we talked about it, we discussed it. It was called, at least in the leaks, a controller, and it's literally an image of a controller, so very straightforward. This is why I make disclaimers, because with data mines you have to take it with a grain of salt, as sometimes they just scrap things. Like they scrapped Clefairy, they brought back Clefairy, which means that they could be bringing this item back as well, and I kind of feel like it would be very fitting in the new map if they brought back this item. Before I explain what it is, I did ask you guys in that video what you thought this controller item was, and Christian says, I think it might be an item used to prevent from scoring on your goal for a short period of time. It would balance out Zapdos. Zapdos ain't here no more. Mr. Mystery Cake says, it's an item that allows you to control your opponent's game and shut down their system. Sounds a little bit OP. I don't know, maybe they need to balance that one a little bit. Fluff System says, I could see this being a stun item, like you take away the enemy's control for a split second on a long cooldown. And there were just so many different answers to this. For the question of the day, if you could bring an item or a battle item into the game, what kind of item would you like to see? I would love to know in the comments down below. But what I think, and what I still think it is that it's a ward. For those who don't know what a ward is, in MOBAs, so in games like League of Legends, in games like Smite, wards are a very, very important consumable that really help you strategize in your games. Now, consumables in those games is basically an item that you can't reuse again. Sometimes you can use it as like a battle item. So in this case, in Pokemon Unite, it probably would be a battle item, which means you can reuse it after a certain time period, but wards really help you see things that you usually wouldn't. So in Pokemon Unite, we have a bunch of grass. When an enemy is in the grass, you can't see them unless you're fighting or something. But with the wards, if you place these wards in the grass area, you can see enemies in the grass area. So in the old map, this was a bit like, you know, not as great because it was very predictable where enemies would be. It's pretty much the same thing over and over again. I do think in the old map, there was much less strategy in comparison to how the new map is right now. So here in Smite, I will show you real quick. Here in Smite, you can see I can't see anything on the map there. Like there is nothing there. This is a really important objective, by the way. I don't know what they're called now in Smite. Maybe it's back when I played, it was called the Fire Giant. Maybe it's still called that. But anyways, that's a very important objective. It's a huge buff, but generally you can't see what's happening there on the map because you don't have vision of it. However, if I place this ward there, I can now see things on that map. I can see if something is happening, if something is going towards it, if they're in that area, if they're fighting it. You can see a lot of things. So wards are basically an item that give you a lot of information that you wouldn't have had previously, which really helps you make important decisions in the game. So in at least Smite, it was great for everyone to have a ward, but defenders and supporters built them the most. And I feel like in Pokemon Unite, probably they would have these items the most, like in their kit instead of like aggressive items. And the reason why I think the controller is a ward in Pokemon Unite is because in League of Legends, one of their wards is called the Control Ward. Another supporting piece of info for me on why I think this is a ward as well in Pokemon Unite is because they specifically called it a controller. If they were to put a ward in Pokemon Unite, I do think they only have room for one type of ward, because in other MOBAs, they have multiple types of wards. So in League of Legends, you have the Totem Ward, which just gives you sight of everything, whereas the Control Ward, it reveals other enemy wards and it also disables other enemy wards. So if they were to put a ward in Pokemon Unite, it would have to be one that can counter each other, because we don't have enough battle item slots to just pick a ward that's that's not counted. Does that make sense? So in Smite, we had like the normal ward, but then we also had the sentry ward, and the sentry ward was used to counter the normal wards. In Smite, you actually can buy items, so the sentry wards were more expensive and generally better for late game or like certain areas, but it is a ward to counter each other's wards. So in Pokemon Unite, if you only have one battle item slot, it only makes sense to make it a ward that can counter other wards, just in case, like for example, if you have a ward and the enemy team has a ward, then you can use your ward to take out the enemy wards, so then you actually have vision of the area and not them. The controller would be a unique item in the game, so I do think some of the items in Pokemon Unite are not actually in the main series. So for example, float stones are in the main series, and in the main series it's called a very light stone. It reduces the weight of a Pokemon when held, and in the game you run faster with this item after a certain time period. So I looked up controller and I couldn't find anything that would give us an indication of what this item could be, which is why all I have is my guesses on what this item could be. And with MOBAs, it's very common for them to like, I would not say like take ideas, but take inspiration from each other, because it is a genre. So when you're in a certain genre, of course, there's going to be very similar elements, and wards are such a huge thing in MOBAs, so it makes sense for them to eventually be in Pokemon Unite. If they do add this item, like they could probably never put this in the game if they wanted to, but I feel like if they were to put this in a game at some point, the best time is around this time now, because the new map is so much better suited for it. One of the most popular comments on my video was that they didn't agree with the wards being in the game. 60s here says, wards in this game would feel awful compared to the other items in my opinion. The map is so small as well. You can mostly speculate where enemy team is walking since it's only a 2-lane map as well. So this is a very important part about the old map. It was very predictable. It was very easy to know where enemies are, and the biggest con of the old map is that you could see the objectives' health from no matter where you were. You could see what they were doing. You couldn't see the enemies, but you could see the objectives. You could see how low they were. This means that you could strategize if you were going to come in and steal the objective, come in and contest the objective. Without these wards, you just didn't need them. They were useless basically. The only time that these wards would have been useful in the game is, I don't know, maybe putting them in the grass just to have it there. You know, extra info was always great. Or like in the middle area where Zapdos spawned, you could just have it where the enemy jump pads down, so you know who was coming there. So you could, like, if you were a defender or supporter, you could defend the choke area and prevent them from coming to Zapdos. That is a way you could use it, I guess. But in the new map, in my opinion, there are multiple ways to play the new map now, whether that is by Rayquaza or that is by scoring. It is solo queue, so like you have to consider these multiple different strategies. In my personal opinion, I do think like if you are ahead, you don't necessarily need Rayquaza, since it's not a game deciding factor like Zapdos was. Its impact is not as crazy as Zapdos was. It's so easy to counter as well. As much as I could say, like, you know, maybe just score if you're ahead while the enemy team is on Rayquaza. If you're already ahead, you might as well get that double scoring in their base, etc., because it will keep you ahead. You know, in most cases. I mean, I'm sure there's like some little cases where maybe not, but it's solo queue. You can't, as much as I would tell people these things in my videos, there are a lot of people in the game that don't watch YouTube videos, so it is very important to adapt to the situation in your games. And I think control wards or controllers would really help with that if it was a ward. And because you can't see the objective's health anymore, you don't know when to steal. And in solo queue, a big thing about what made solo queue a lot easier to play than now, in my opinion, I find the new map so much better though. Like, even though solo queue is a bit harder now because you can't really like carry the game with just Zapdos anymore, controller wards will give you information that you wouldn't have had before. You can see the health of the objective. That means if you were like Decidueye or something, even though I don't know if Decidueye should build controller wards, but at the same time, Decidueye dies so quickly anyway, so maybe if I had to rely on Decidueye snipes to steal objectives and win the game for us that way, maybe I could do something like that. But Decidueye, in my opinion, gets hurt a lot in solo queue with objective steals because you can't see the health bar anymore. And one of Decidueye's coolest gimmicks for me is that it had such a fun and easy time stealing objectives. With a controller ward, it makes it possible again. Decidueye, or anyone really, could use these controller wards for just information. There are also so many different entry points to Rayquaza now as well. Before it was one choke point and then it was above and below, but now there are 2 areas that you can come from as well. So as a defender or supporter, if you were trying to zone enemies away from Rayquaza, it would be really important to put a controller ward on one side, so then you can tell which way the enemy team will be coming from, or the most important targets are coming from. So for example, a Pokemon who has a lot of damage, who can secure Rayquaza a lot easier than a defender that doesn't have much damage, you would want to get rid of those squishy targets, or those targets that are high priority first. So there are just so many different strategies you can use with these controller wards. I think it's so much more fitting in the new map now as well. There are just so many possible places to put it in the new map. I do agree that in the old map, it just wasn't as crazy. It wasn't as like important in the old map, because in the old map it was just pretty much straightforward. It was pretty much the same routine. But the new map, I think there are just so much more ways to strategize as well, and I personally wouldn't mind seeing a control ward in the game. However, I would love to know your thoughts, trainers. In other MOBAs, wards were extremely important. In Pokemon Unite, I have no idea. It is very different to other MOBAs. It has a very unique charm to it. It's a lot more faster paced. It's a lot more casual in my opinion. Like, it still is really intense, but because it's always just a 10-minute set time, I guess, like, you always just know the deciding factor of who's gonna win or lose after a certain time frame. Whereas in other MOBAs, they could go for like hours. Maybe not hours, but for a really long time. So I would love to hear your opinions down below, what you think about this item, if it does come to the game, if it is a control. If you don't think it is a ward, I would love to know what you think it is instead, because really controller could mean anything. That is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, trainers. Hope to catch you for the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and like the video if you found this interesting. Bye!